I'm asking, do you agree with the characterization that you are a legal progressive?
Senator Sessions, I honestly don't know what that label means. I've worked in 2 Democratic administrations. Senator Graham suggested yesterday, and I think he's right, that you can tell something about me and my political views from that.
Elena Kagan's questioning has begun, and as always, maybe a little more heat than light.
And in fact, Rick, there was reference to the hearings being as boring as hell, so some more heat there as well. Top Line begins right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Washington Post Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Jonathan Karl.
Every day at noon Eastern, we're right here bringing you the latest political news and analysis, everything you need to know, and we are never boring. I promise you that. And John, kick us off. You're up there in the hearing room where Elena Kagan's questioning has begun.
It's cross-examination time, and make no mistake, this is the day that counts in these 4 or 5 days worth of hearings. This is the day when Kagan is taking the questions from Democrats and Republicans. She has taken some very tough questions from Republicans already in the first couple of hours, especially on that recruitment policy up at Harvard. But I've got to tell you, Rick, watching this, she has looked comfortable here at the stand, and she has by and large appeared to be answering the questions even when she has by necessity had to avoid some of them.
Indeed, probably just boring enough for it to all work out. You don't want to make headlines. That you're right, this is the critical first round of questions where you see the best arguments that the opponents on the Republican side can possibly muster, but not a lot of suspense so far as we see this develop. A lot of things that we expected to be asked are being asked indeed. Next up, pressing Petraeus. David Petraeus' confirmation hearings are underway in the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he is almost certainly going to be confirmed and confirmed overwhelmingly and very quickly. But the real questioning is around the July 2011 date for troop withdrawal, that deadline that President Obama has set and that the generals, including Petraeus, have said that they're going to keep to. What does that actually mean? And there's been some backtracking from the Obama White House. General Petraeus himself saying today that our commitment will still last years beyond July 2011. That's not something that's likely to sit well on the left.
And Rick, as General Petraeus has faced the Senate Armed Services Committee, there has been another drama playing out today over in the House, and that is over the war funding bill. Republicans have dug in their heels today saying that they will vote against the war funding bill if it includes extra add-on spending for things unrelated to the war, and by all indications are Democrats will need Republican support to get that passed. It's unclear how this all comes together, but it's something that I'm sure General Petraeus is watching during breaks between the hearing because it really matters. Next up, moments of truth. Sharon Angle, the Republican nominee for Senate out in Nevada, has spent 3 weeks running, in this case, in a parking lot out in Nevada from reporters, avoiding all questions. But today, she will actually face questions. Also, Mark Kirk in Illinois has also been a Republican candidate who has been avoiding questions from the press. Here you actually see him taking off through a kitchen of a restaurant to avoid questions from the press. But today, both of them will go before reporters out in Nevada. Sharon Angle is going up against John Ralston, the most well-known and arguably toughest political reporter in Nevada. He will sit down with Sharon Angle later today. And Mark Kirk is holding a press conference where he will finally be forced to answer some questions about whether or not he has exaggerated his resume.
That's right. Ralston, the real deal out in Nevada. You can't win an election without going through questioning from him. It is interesting that we're seeing candidates more and more choose their outlets. It's not that Sharon Angle has gone underground. She's done lots of interviews. They've just only been with conservative media outlets. She's been ducking questions from local reporters, the kind of folks you usually try to court when you're running for Senate in a state like Nevada. And finally, spy games. A bizarre story of espionage. An apparent Russian spy ring broken up. Families who were embedded to kind of look on the eavesdrop on important people's conversations, perhaps attend think tank meetings, that sort of thing. We're not talking about people that were embedding inside the CIA here. We're talking about people that were trying to pick up on Georgetown cocktail chatter. Very, very interesting. And in fact, one of the couples arrested lived just a few miles from where President Obama and the Russian President Medvedev had burgers in Arlington just last week. A really odd story, John.
And, you know, there may be more to come out of this. The papers in this make reference to a former senior national security official who had contact with these suspects, and also a prominent fundraiser party operative, doesn't say which party, in New York. So there could be more embarrassing revelations coming out of it. But, Rick, as you know, the Russians are out today adamantly denying any of this and saying the very accusations are part of a Cold War mentality.
It sounds like the Salahis meet spying to me.
It sure does. But first, we begin with the Kagan hearings. Just a few moments ago, we spoke to one of the prominent Democrats on this panel, Senator Chuck Schumer. Senator Schumer, welcome to Topline, and thank you for taking a quick break from the nomination hearings to come and talk to us. I wanted to start with something your colleague, Democratic Senator Herb Kohl, had to say about Elena Kagan.
We have less evidence about what sort of judge you will be than on any nominee in recent memory. Your judicial philosophy is almost invisible to us.
Given, Senator, how little we know about Elena Kagan's judicial philosophy, how hard are you going to press to learn more about where she stands on some of the critical issues that would come before the court?
Well, first, I love Herb Kohl, but I disagree with him. I think we know plenty about her. Having 170 some odd thousand pages of her as Solicitor General, countless articles and discussions, sometimes you learn almost as much about somebody when they're not issuing decisions as a judge, sometimes even more than when they are, and we have a voluminous record. So Herb may be referring to the fact that she doesn't have a judicial record, but we've got plenty of stuff about her.
So that lack of judicial record, in your mind, it doesn't put an extra burden on her? Do you think she should have to answer it with more specificity because there's less out there in what she would do as a judge?
Well, except that I think that, you know, in terms of judicial philosophy, there are lots of people who have judicial philosophies who are not judges. There are a lot of professors and a lot of article writers and things like that, and I think we get some idea of her judicial philosophy, which is modest and moderate. She's not one of these people who believes that the law ought to be used to dramatically pull the nation in one direction or another. She's a lawyer's lawyer, and that's been outlined in her philosophy all along.
Senator, the Republicans have obviously made a lot about her decision to deny access to military recruiters to that Harvard Career Center. My question to you is, if you had been in her shoes up there at Harvard, would you have made a similar decision? Was it the right decision? Did she make the right decision by banning the military from that office?
Well, everyone has different beliefs on that, but I will say this. The idea that she banned it is not true. She didn't allow them to be part of the official recruiting day, but gave the military the right to recruit all during that time. And in fact, military recruitment out of Harvard Law School went up. And then as soon as the decision was rendered, she made them equal to all the other recruiters. So I think this is overblown. Again, I think it shows what Elena Kagan is. She had her beliefs and her philosophy here, but she wasn't going to let it get in the way. You know, she wasn't going to be an ideologue about it. And she continued to allow military recruiting in a way that substantively didn't stop military recruiting at Harvard, even during the time before the decision was rendered.
I understand, but just quickly, was it the wrong decision, though, to deny those recruiters access to the recruiting center?
If you and the school you represent has a strong philosophy the other way, I think she sort of thread the needle quite well.
Senator, I want to turn your attention briefly to financial regulatory reform. As you know, the death of Senator Byrd, as well as the announcements from a couple of senators, make it look like it's very hard to get the votes. Do you have the votes, and do you still expect that this is going to get approved before the 4th of July?
Well, I do expect it will be approved. The death of Senator Byrd does throw a little bit of a crimp in things. We're counting the votes right now, and obviously I believe it will depend on whether the handful of Republicans who went along before continue to go along. There's been some talk that a few of them didn't like the way of paying for this, and we'll see what happens if that's enough to push them to vote no. There's nothing definitive yet.
Well, in fact, Scott Brown has said, I mean, he's come pretty close to saying he's going to vote no. He's saying he would never support a tax increase. He sees this as an $18 billion tax increase on the banks. Susan Collins has some of the same concerns. Do you share some of those concerns? Are you happy with the changes that were made in conference on this bill?
Well, I think the bill is a very good bill. I've always believed that we ought to have strong, forward-thinking reform that moves our system forward. There were tons of mistakes made, and some of it, much of it, due to a poor regulatory structure and non-existent. On the other hand, the changes shouldn't be punitive, vindictive, or counterproductive. And while I might disagree with one little piece here or there, overall I think it's a very, very positive bill that comes out in about the right place.
Senator, broadly on the Kagan hearings again, you and many other senators have been critical about this process in the past, about what you actually learned from these hearings. points. What has to happen this week, do you think, to say, for you to look back and say this was a successful process, regardless of what happens with confirmation, this means that we had a good, honest discussion?
Well, I think that, certainly, and I was one of the first to say this, that senators are entitled to ask questions about judicial philosophy, judicial ideology. There was some, before 1998, there was some view you shouldn't even ask these questions. I think my colleagues, Democrat and Republican, are entitled to ask them. I think Elena Kagan will indeed answer these questions. She can't answer questions about cases that might come before her. There's a general consensus on that. But I think at the end of these hearings, they will be successful if we get a pretty good idea of who Elena Kagan is. And I think we will, given what we've seen so far.
And then we're almost out of time, but just quickly, I mean, we saw, Scalia was confirmed 99-0. Ruth Bader Ginsburg confirmed without opposition. Are those days just gone?
Well, they're temporarily gone. I wish they'd come back. Again, I think that Democratic presidents have tended to nominate more moderate people, but we're not getting very much support from Republicans. But I consider the Sotomayor vote, given the temper of the times, pretty successful, where you had, I think, between 5 and 10, I don't remember the exact number of Republican senators vote for her. That was pretty good.
All right, Senator Chuck Schumer, we look forward to having you back on Top Line. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you, Senator.